There's something about dinner at your in-laws' place that makes you feel like you're on trial without knowing what you're accused of. Especially in Maggie's family. Everyone smiles too much, drinks too little, and talks about nothing like it's everything. Every conversation feels like a chess match, subtle, strategic, never direct. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself cornered without even realizing you moved a piece. It was a Sunday, late October, warm for St. Louis. The kind of evening where the air still carried that fall crispness, but you could get away without a jacket. Maggie had insisted we go, even though she knew I had a deadline that Monday. Just a couple of hours, she'd said. They'll ask if you're not there. The way she said it, they'll ask like I was a topic to be managed. I should have known something was off when we pulled into her parents' cul-de-sac, and she immediately asked me not to start anything. I hadn't said a word yet. Just don't do that thing where you get quiet and weird, she added, checking her reflection in the visor mirror. They pick up on your moods. I laughed under my breath. Right? Can't have the family feeling emotions. She didn't respond, just adjusted her lipstick and stepped out of the car like she was walking into a job interview she already planned on resenting. Her parents' house was straight out of a real estate magazine. White siding, brick trim, porch light with warm bulbs, wreath on the door that changed with the seasons. Inside, it was all muted tones and matching place settings. The kind of home where no one raised their voice and everything looked like it had been steam cleaned twice that week. Her father, Ron, greeted me with the usual firm handshake and a quiet nod. Maggie's mom, Susan, air-kissed my cheek and told me I looked so rested, which I knew was code for, "You look like hell, but I'm too polite to say it." Their small talk was always polite, always careful. Like they were afraid if they said something too real, the walls might crack and reveal what was really going on. Dinner started as expected. Roast chicken, some kind of couscous salad with cranberries, asparagus with too much lemon. Maggie complimented her mom's cooking even though I'd heard her trash it on the way over. Susan laughed like she'd just been given a standing ovation. We were halfway through the main course when it happened. Maggie had set her phone down beside her wine glass, face up. I wasn't even looking for anything, but it lit up. A name I didn't recognize, Nathan M., flashed across the screen. One of those preview notifications that showed the first few words of the message. Can't wait to see you again. And then she flipped it over. Fast. Too fast. Like a reflex. Nobody else seemed to notice. But I did. Every cell in my body noticed. Maggie didn't look at me. She just went right back to eating like nothing happened. But she was chewing slower. Her left foot, the one always shaking under the table when she was nervous, started its silent rhythm again. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The silence between us said everything. Then came the jab. I was in the middle of answering her father's question about my latest client when she suddenly cut in. Voice a little louder than necessary, laced with mock amusement. Oh, come on, Dad. Don't bore everyone with the details of his consulting. You know, Mark's job is basically to write long emails no one reads and sit on Zoom calls pretending to look busy. There it was. That cruel, joking tone she used when she was either trying to put me in my place or distract from something. And right on cue, Susan chuckled awkwardly. Ron looked down at his plate, and Maggie smiled like she was waiting for applause. I just blinked at her. I think that's what got her, that I didn't fire back, didn't play along. Didn't even smile to keep the peace. I reached into my coat pocket, the inside one, and slid out the envelope I'd been carrying for 2 weeks. Quietly, carefully, placed it in her lap without a word. She looked down, confused at first. Then she recognized the handwriting. Her own name. "What is this?" she asked, tone clipped. "Open it." She didn't. She just looked at me, then back at the envelope. Her eyes darted up toward her mom and dad, probably calculating how loud she'd need to speak to make this about me instead of her. "You're really going to do this here?" she hissed. "At my parents' table?" "You did." Her jaw tightened. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out if she was more offended, embarrassed, or afraid. "You're being dramatic," she said finally, trying to maintain her composure. "This is pathetic." Then she turned to her mother and said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know he was going to bring his issues to dinner. That's when I saw it. The slight flinch in Susan's expression. A tiny crack in the Stepford smile. "Maggie," her father said quietly. Just her name. Not a reprimand. Just a subtle cue that maybe she should stop talking. But Maggie didn't take cues unless they were neon lit and shoved down her throat. She stood up from the table, envelope still untouched, arms crossed like a schoolgirl who'd been scolded unfairly. "You're making a scene," she whispered at me. I stayed seated. "You made it first," I said, low enough so only she could hear. She stared at me, unblinking, like she thought if she held my gaze long enough, I'd back down. I didn't. For the first time in months, I didn't flinch. "This is unbelievable," she said louder, turning toward her parents now. "I bring him here to be civil, and he pulls this stunt in the middle of dinner. He ambushes me with, what? Divorce papers? Like I'm supposed to. I don't even know what this is." "You know exactly what this is," I said, standing now. "Don't you dare," she snapped, voice rising. "Don't you dare try to flip this on me. Flip it. That's rich." Susan was blinking fast, napkin in her lap now clutched like a lifeline. Ron just stared down at the plate like he'd seen this movie too many times and already knew how it ended. "You humiliate me in front of my family?" Maggie said, tears gathering now. "Not the real kind. Not yet. And you want to act like you're the victim?" "No," I said. "I'm just done playing the part." I turned and walked out. Simple as that. No dramatic exit, no slamming doors. Just took my coat from the back of the chair, gave Ron a nod, and left. Behind me, I heard her mother ask, "Maggie? What's going on?" I didn't stick around for the answer. After I left Maggie's parents' house that night, I didn't go straight home. I ended up parked outside a gas station on the edge of town. One of those old ones with flickering lights and a sign that hadn't been updated since the Clinton administration. I sat there for at least an hour, staring at the humming neon open sign, thinking about how strange it was that everything had changed in one night, except it hadn't. It had been changing for a long time. I just hadn't let myself see it. And now, sitting in that old Civic with the heater rattling and the hum of far-off traffic in the background, I started connecting the dots I'd been too afraid, or too loyal, to look at before. The puzzle pieces weren't new. They'd been there, waiting. I just hadn't realized they were part of the same box. Like how Maggie suddenly had more girls' nights than usual. It used to be maybe once every couple months, and even then she'd text me mid-evening, usually a selfie with her friends and some sarcastic caption like, "Survived Susan's wine choices again." But these last few months, it became every other weekend, then once a week, then sometimes on a Wednesday, which she explained with, "You know how stressed work's been. I need time to breathe." But there were no selfies anymore. No texts, no calls. Just her walking out the door with perfect makeup, perfect hair, and barely a glance behind her. Then there was the trip to Chicago back in July. She said it was for work. 3 nights. She left on a Thursday and came back Sunday evening. Her stories didn't match up when she got home. Said her flight was delayed, but the airline app showed it landed on time. Said she stayed at a Hilton, but the keycard she left in her jeans pocket said Hyatt. I noticed all of it, but I brushed it off. People make mistakes. Maybe she forgot. Maybe I was just being insecure. But it wasn't just the inconsistencies. It was her eyes. They weren't tired or stressed when she walked back in that night. They were lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. Not since the early days when we'd get back from a concert or a weekend away and couldn't stop talking about it. But she didn't want to talk this time. She gave me a kiss on the cheek, said she was exhausted, and disappeared into the shower. And I remember standing outside that bathroom door, listening to the water running and realizing she was humming. Humming. After a business trip. That was the moment I should have known. But I didn't. Or maybe I did and chose not to. The lies we tell ourselves to preserve the story we want to believe. Then there were the small, surgical changes in how she treated me. Death by 1,000 tiny rejections. She stopped asking how my day was. Stopped laughing at my dumb jokes. I used to bring her coffee in bed on weekends, and she'd smile like I was some romantic genius. Lately, She'd just glance at it, say thanks, and scroll through her phone. Always the phone. Always tilted away from me, screen brightness turned low. I'm not a jealous guy. I'm not one of those paranoid types who checks texts or monitors GPS. But when you live with someone long enough, you notice when their energy shifts. It's like standing in a room where the thermostat's been nudged down. You don't notice it right away, but eventually, you realize you're shivering. Looking back, I think I started losing her last winter. Maybe earlier. We were out at a friend's holiday party. The kind of thing where everyone's in ugly sweaters and pretending they like eggnog. Maggie looked incredible that night. Red dress, that dark lipstick she rarely wore anymore. I remember watching her across the room as she laughed with a couple guys from her work. One of them, a tall guy with a fade and square glasses, leaned in too close. I watched her put a hand on his arm, just for a second. Later that night, in the car, I asked who he was. Nobody, she said. We were just talking about a client. He's harmless. I didn't push. I let it go. But I never forgot the way her tone shifted when she said, harmless. Defensive. Dismissive. Too quick. Over the months that followed, her patience with me evaporated. If I asked if she'd be home for dinner, she'd get snippy. If I said I missed spending time together, she'd say I was being needy. And when I tried to be romantic, surprise flowers, random lunch visits, the trip I booked to Colorado just for a weekend reset, she acted like it was all performative. Like I was trying to buy her forgiveness for a crime I didn't know I'd committed. At first, I thought maybe I had changed. Maybe I was too distant, too tired, too caught up in work. But the truth is, I was trying. I was trying hard to hold on to something that already had one foot out the door. The problem wasn't that she left. The problem was that she started leaving months before she ever said the words. And it wasn't just about what she was doing. It was what she had stopped doing. She stopped planning things with me. She stopped dreaming aloud about the future. The house we wanted to buy, the trips we wanted to take, the kids we hadn't decided on yet. All of that faded. She stopped sharing music with me. That used to be our thing. She'd always say, I found a song that sounds like us. I haven't heard that sentence in over a year. She used to make fun of me, lovingly, for the way I cooked pasta. Too much salt, too many spices. You're not feeding pirates, she'd say. The last time I made it, she didn't say anything. She just moved it around on her plate and left half of it untouched. Silence, I've learned, can be louder than yelling. The week before that dinner at her parents', something weird happened that didn't register until much later. I had come home from a weekend away, a solo camping trip I took after she said she needed space to breathe. I found one of her earrings under the couch, a small gold stud. Nothing special, but it caught my eye because Maggie didn't wear studs. She liked hoops or dangly ones. I held it up when she walked in from work that Monday and said, You dropped this. She glanced at it and said, Must have been there for a while. Then she took it from me, too fast, and tossed it into a drawer like it was a used paperclip. That was the moment I should have known. But again, I didn't. Or I did, and I buried it. That's what I keep circling back to. How much I chose not to see. Because seeing would have meant action. Seeing would have meant admitting I'd already lost her. Sometimes the hardest part isn't the betrayal. It's the months you spent loving a ghost. And now that I'm here, staring at it all from a distance, the puzzle pieces don't feel shocking. They feel obvious. They feel inevitable. Like the slow, quiet collapse of something beautiful you thought was unbreakable. The truth is, Maggie didn't suddenly become someone else. She just stopped pretending to be someone who loved me. I used to think the worst thing was suspecting. That slow drip anxiety, the quiet erosion of trust. It eats you alive from the inside. But I was wrong. The worst part isn't the suspicion. It's the confirmation. The moment when the air goes still, and your gut whispers, there it is. It happened 3 days after the dinner. I was at home alone, sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, trying to distract myself with work. The same job Maggie mocked. The emails no one reads and Zoom calls where I pretend to look busy. I hadn't done a single productive thing since the dinner. My head was too loud. Every time I opened an email, my mind wandered back to that man's name on her phone screen. Nathan M. Who was he? Someone from her work? A gym trainer? An old friend she ran into and grabbed lunch with once? I didn't want to look. Didn't want to go digging. But I also knew she wasn't going to come clean. Maggie never did unless her back was pinned to the wall. That morning, I heard her phone buzz on the counter. She was in the shower. I wouldn't have touched it. But when I glanced at the screen, I saw her email app open. She'd left it unlocked. And then, like something out of a twisted movie, it popped up. A new email from Nathan M. It was short, just a few lines. But it changed everything. Thanks for your patience. I know this isn't easy, but we're getting closer. I can't wait for this weekend. It'll be the first one we don't have to sneak around. Hang in there. Everything is about to change. There it was, clear as day. Not flirting, not vague, no deniability. This wasn't emotional cheating. This wasn't, I got carried away. This was an affair, full stop, and one they'd been planning around the divorce. I just sat there, reading it again and again. My hands didn't shake. I didn't yell. I didn't throw her phone. It was like something inside me just turned off. Some circuit breaker that had been overloaded for months. I set the phone down face up and walked outside. Sat on the porch steps. Couldn't even feel the cold air. Just numbness. This strange, heavy quiet that pressed against my ears like I'd gone underwater. It wasn't even the betrayal that hit me the hardest. It was the timeline. This had been going on long before the dinner. Probably before the Chicago trip. Maybe even earlier. That was the part that gutted me. Knowing I'd been giving her the benefit of the doubt while she'd been handing pieces of our marriage to someone else. When Maggie came downstairs, she didn't even notice her phone had moved. She kissed me on the head like everything was normal and asked if I wanted her to pick up groceries. I nodded, mute, and I realized something chilling in that moment. She wasn't going to stop. She wasn't even sorry. In her mind, the affair was a solution. The new life, the escape hatch. She was just waiting for the dust to settle. That night, I called her mother. I don't know what I expected. I just needed someone who knew Maggie better than I did at that point. Someone who could tell me if I was crazy, or if this was the version of her they had always known. Susan answered on the second ring. "Hi, Mark," she said, sounding cautious. "How are you?" There was a long pause before I responded. "I'm going to ask you something," I said. "And I need you to be honest." She went silent. "Has Maggie said anything to you? About Nathan? About what's going on?" Another beat of silence. And then her voice soft, tired. "I thought you knew." My heart sank. "I mean," she continued, "Ron and we didn't want to interfere. We thought maybe you two were going through something, or maybe it was more complicated. But yes, she's been seeing someone. For a while." "How long?" She hesitated. 6 months, maybe longer. 6 months. That would have been spring. Back when I thought we were just in a rough patch. Back when I was planning our anniversary trip. She never told me directly, Susan added quickly. It was in pieces. Things she said in passing, things we overheard. At first we thought it was just a flirtation. But then she stopped talking about you. She used to mention you all the time, little things like what you were reading or how you cooked that terrible pasta. She tried to laugh, but it fell flat. "What changed?" I asked. She started talking like you were inconvenient, like you were something she had to manage around. "I'm sorry, Mark. I really am." There was a pause. And then Susan said something I didn't expect. "I'm not surprised you had the papers ready." I blinked. "What?" "At dinner," she said. "I saw them in your coat pocket when you hung it over the chair." I didn't say anything, but I knew something was coming. I sat there stunned. Why didn't anyone say anything to me? Why didn't you? Her voice wavered. "Because we're cowards. Because Maggie's always been the way she is. Charming, yes, but also controlling. And we learned a long time ago that calling her out only makes things worse. Ron, he's known for years that she uses shame as a *p*n. He just wanted peace. Even if it cost me everything?" She sighed. "I think he hoped you'd figure it out and get out before she broke you completely." I hung up shortly after. I thanked her, but I couldn't say much else. There's not really a script for what to say to your wife's mother when she confirms your worst fear and then confesses she saw it coming. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. That night, I just sat in the living room and watched the shadows move across the ceiling until morning. And then, something unexpected happened. I felt clarity. I thought I'd feel shattered, but I didn't. I felt calm. Cold, but calm. Like the fog had finally lifted and I could see the wreckage for what it was. She had made her choice. Quietly. Repeatedly. And now I was done pretending it hadn't happened. The next morning, she came downstairs in leggings and a hoodie like everything was normal. Scrolling through her phone, sipping coffee. I looked at her. Really looked. And realized I didn't recognize her anymore. Same face, same voice, but none of the light. None of the connection we used to have. It was gone. And I knew then, with a certainty that I could feel in my bones, that I was never going back. You can tell a lot about a person by how they react when they realize they've lost control. Some people shut down. Some lash out. But Maggie reorganized. Like it was a PR disaster she could spin into a redemption arc. The morning after I read Nathan's email, after I heard the quiet confirmation from her mother, Maggie was acting like everything was fine. She was in the kitchen making avocado toast like we hadn't been living in a house made of lies. She even played music on her phone while she cooked, humming like we were in some early-stage rom-com. I just sat at the table, sipping coffee, waiting for her to say something. But nothing came. No apology. No confession. No cracks in the performance. So I gave her none of me. When I didn't engage, her first tactic was cheerfulness. Overly casual questions. Plans for the week that included, maybe catching a movie Friday? Like we were dating again. Do you want to try that new Thai place after work tomorrow? She asked, clearing the plates. I looked up at her and just said, no, that's it. No explanation. No softening. And I could see in her eyes, just for a flicker, that it rattled her. She left for work shortly after, in her business casual armor and a fake smile. I spent the day doing the most peaceful thing I could think of. Nothing. I didn't call anyone. Didn't answer texts. I went for a walk, wandered around a hardware store just to *LL time, grabbed a sandwich and ate it alone in my car. Felt good. Quiet. Stable. Like my mind had been released from something tight and suffocating. And then, around 5:30, she showed up at my office. Not called. Not texted. Just walked in like we were in some dramatic movie scene she'd imagined where she'd cry and I'd hold her and we'd fade into a slow montage of healing. My office isn't flashy. Just a beige room on the third floor of a bland business complex in Kansas City. But seeing her standing in the lobby with her coat clutched around her like she was cold, that did something to me. Not because I felt compassion. Because I could see it all clicking in her face. This wasn't going how she'd planned. Mark, she said softly. Can we talk? I motioned for her to follow me into the small conference room near reception. No one else was there. It was after hours. Fluorescent lighting hummed above us. She sat down slowly. Her posture was a little too perfect. Like she was trying to shrink herself, play the role of the reasonable one who just wanted to fix things. I don't want to fight, she started. I didn't respond. Just watched her. I know you're angry, she continued. But this doesn't have to be so final. I finally spoke. Final. She nodded quickly. The divorce. The papers. I think you're making a decision in the heat of the moment. We haven't even talked. We've talked, Maggie, I said calmly. You just weren't listening. She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. And I'm not angry, I added. I'm done. Her face changed at that, a flicker of frustration behind the performance. She adjusted in her seat, uncrossed her legs, recrossed them again. The mask was slipping slowly. You're not even willing to hear my side of it? She asked. I laughed. Not bitter, just tired. Your side. She leaned forward. It's not what you think. Then explain it to me, I said. Go ahead. Walk me through the part where you lied to me for 6 months. Where you planned weekends with someone else while I was booking our anniversary trip. where you texted Nathan about how the divorce would speed things up. Her breath hitched, just for a second. She knew I saw the email. So you went through my phone, she said, tone sharpening. There it is, I said. That didn't take long. What does that mean? You're not sorry I found out, I said. You're mad I caught you. She didn't respond. I didn't go through your phone, I added. You left it open. But even if I had, I'm not the one who cheated. Maggie looked away, biting her lip. I used to find that endearing. Now it just looked like someone trying to summon tears. I made a mistake, she whispered. I let the silence hang. A mistake, I repeated. 6 months of lying, sneaking around, planning a new life. That's not a mistake. That's a campaign. Mark, I was lonely, she said. You were always working. You never noticed when I was drowning. Because you never said a word, I snapped. You didn't give me a chance to fix anything. You decided I was a problem, and instead of talking to me, you auditioned replacements. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she said. But it did go that far, I said. And now you want to pretend like it's just a rough patch? She wiped at her eyes. There were no tears yet, but she was working on them. I still love you, she said, and I believed her, but not in the way she wanted. I believed she loved the version of me that was predictable, contained, the one who stayed while she wandered, the one who made excuses for her and carried the emotional weight she didn't want to acknowledge. I think you love control, I said quietly. That caught her off guard. She looked genuinely stunned. You love when you can shape the story, I added. When you're the one deciding what's true, what matters, what gets remembered. And now you've lost control of the story, and it's K*ling you. She didn't argue, just sat there, blinking, her mouth slightly open, like she wanted to speak but forgot the script. Why are you really here? I asked. Because you miss me? Or because you didn't expect me to actually go through with it? Her silence was the answer. I stood up. I don't hate you, Maggie, but I don't trust you. And I can't build a future with someone who looks at me and sees a convenience. She looked up at me. So that's it. That's it. She nodded slowly, collected her coat. As she stood, she paused at the door and said, You're throwing away years together. No, I said. You threw it away. I'm just cleaning up the mess. She left without another word. I stayed in that conference room another few minutes. Long enough for the emotions to settle. Long enough for the echo of her voice to fade from the walls. When I finally walked back to my office, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Relief. The thing about breaking up a marriage is that no matter how private you try to keep it, the ripple effect always spreads. You think it'll just be between the two of you, the hurt, the fallout, the decision. But that's never how it works. Family, friends, coworkers. Everyone starts circling the debris like vultures, peering into the wreckage with their own ideas of who to blame and what went wrong. I expected Maggie to spin it, and she did. By the end of the week, word had reached mutual friends that I'd blindsided her, that I was overreacting, possibly going through something, or my favorite, in a toxic masculine spiral, whatever that means. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't make my case. I didn't show *TS or quote her emails or name-drop Nathan. Let people think what they want, I figured. Truth doesn't need PR. And honestly, letting her own words undo her image sounded more satisfying than getting into a shouting match on Facebook. But the part one hadn't planned for, the one I truly didn't see coming, was Ron. Maggie's dad had always been neutral, quiet, the kind of man who kept opinions to himself unless they involved car maintenance or taxes. During our marriage, I had maybe a dozen real conversations with him, most of them during commercial breaks. He was one of those men who didn't mind silence, who preferred it, really. So when I saw his name on my phone a few nights after Maggie's visit to my office, I almost didn't answer. I assumed he dialed by mistake. But I picked up, curiosity getting the better of me. Mark, he said. His voice was calm, clear. No small talk, no preamble. Just my name, steady and low. Hey, Ron. "Can you meet me?" he asked. "Somewhere outside the house." That threw me a little. "Sure. Where?" "Clark's Diner." 30 minutes? I said yes before I even processed it. When someone who's barely said 10 words to you over a decade calls out of the blue and asks to meet in person, you show up. Clark's was a greasy spoon diner off I-70, halfway between their suburb and the city. It had that eternal smell of coffee and burnt bacon, and every table had the same laminated menu that hadn't changed since 1987. Ron was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth near the window, sipping black coffee and staring out into the dark parking lot. I slid into the seat across from him. He looked at me and gave a single nod, a gesture that, from Ron, felt equivalent to a hug. "Thanks for coming," he said. "No problem," I replied. "Didn't expect to hear from you." He paused, took another sip. "You did the right thing," he said finally. I blinked. "What?" He set the mug down and looked me in the eye. I wanted to say it directly. "You did the right thing. Walking away. Filing. Ending it." I stared at him, trying to gauge whether this was some kind of setup. But he wasn't smiling. He wasn't trying to get anything out of me. He was just telling the truth. "I'm not sure what Maggie's told you," I began carefully. He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "She's told us plenty, and left out more." That stopped me. "I've known for a while," he continued, "that something wasn't right. I didn't know the specifics, didn't know about this Nathan guy. But I saw the way she treated you, the way she talked to you, like you were disposable." I stayed silent. Ron sighed. "Susan and I, we enabled it. I won't lie. We raised her to believe she could do no wrong. That's on us. Every time she acted out, we smoothed it over. Every time she disrespected someone, we made excuses. You were just the latest in a long line of people she used to validate herself." That hit harder than I expected. He leaned back, staring into his mug like it held the rest of the conversation. "I watched you at that dinner," he said. "The way you stayed calm when she humiliated you in front of us. The way you placed those papers in her lap like you'd already grieved it. You weren't trying to make a scene. You were done." I nodded slowly. "I was." "She's not used to people walking away," he said. "She's used to them circling, chasing, apologizing even when she's the one who wrecked everything." "Sounds about right." He looked at me again. "It took me decades to realize she learned that from us. That when we let her treat people like props, she started believing the world owed her applause for every performance." I didn't know what to say to that. I never expected Ron, quiet, practical Ron, to speak with this much honesty. "I guess I just wanted to say I'm sorry," he added. "Not just for what she did, but for the way we let it go on so long." I looked at him, genuinely moved. "Thank you." We sat there in silence for a few minutes, the hum of fluorescent lights above us, the clink of dishes behind the counter. For the first time, I felt like I was talking to someone who'd actually seen what I'd lived through, not just watched from the sidelines. Ron reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. "She left some of her mail at our place," he said, "and some receipts. From Chicago. The dates line up." I took the envelope and nodded. "Don't worry," he added, almost amused. "I didn't open anything, but Susan did. She's the one who found the hotel confirmations. She cried when she saw it." "Because of me?" "No," he said. "Because she realized who her daughter had become." I swallowed hard. "That must have been a hell of a moment." He exhaled. "It was." He stood, dropping a 10 on the table for his coffee. "I don't expect we'll be seeing each other much anymore," he said. "And I get that. But I wanted you to know you weren't crazy. You weren't weak. You just trusted someone who didn't earn it." He paused, then added, "And that's not something to be ashamed of. Something to learn from." We shook hands. His grip was firm, warm, and as I watched him leave that diner, I felt something crack open in my chest. Not grief, not anger, just a strange sense of release, like someone had finally acknowledged the storm I'd survived. It didn't fix anything, but it gave me something I hadn't realized I needed: closure. A week later, she found me. I was staying at a cheap motel off I-70, halfway between nowhere and don't ask. She knocked on the door like it was still her right. I let her speak. She came to reclaim the narrative, not to apologize, but to repaint herself as the victim. You blindsided me, she said. You made me look crazy. She wanted the breakup to be a tantrum, a blip we'd laugh about later. But I just looked at her and said, "You didn't lose me, Maggie. You lost control." That's when it clicked. The tears stopped. Her voice dropped. She saw it wasn't